It's wonderful to have you here. Your brain does not simply power down when you close your eyes. It turns towards something in the dark that waking hours rarely allow. What does the brain truly learn when you are not awake? Welcome to Sleepy Science Facts, wherever you are right now. Allow yourself to set everything down for a while. Perhaps you've been trying to absorb, to remember, to keep up. That weight can rest here. We'll move through 100 brain science facts about sleep learning, starting from the first moment a memory begins to form, moving through the silent consolidation that rewrites your brain while you rest, arriving at what science says remains in you by morning. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're where the day's learning is still being sorted and filed. Let your mind soften into what it carries. And now we begin. Sleep has long been treated as the brain's off switch, the hours when learning stops and the body simply recovers. For most of human history, we assumed that knowledge was built only in the waking world, through reading, practice, and repetition. But neuroscience has steadily dismantled that assumption over the past several decades. The brain during sleep is not passive. It is actively sorting, strengthening, and rewriting what it encountered during the day. Something transformative happens in the dark that no amount of additional waking effort can replicate. What does the brain truly learn when you are not awake? The answer, it turns out, begins the moment you stop trying. The first clue that sleep does something to memory came from a surprisingly simple observation. People who slept after learning a new skill performed noticeably better the next morning than those who stayed awake. Researchers noticed this pattern as early as the 1920s, but it took decades of neuroscience tools, brain scans, electrode recordings, sleep lab measurements, to understand why. Sleep was not merely preventing forgetting. It was doing something actively constructive to the material the brain had encountered. The idea that rest could equal progress quietly challenged everything we assumed about the relationship between effort and learning. That shift in thinking changed everything. Your brain enters several distinct stages each time you sleep, and each stage appears to contribute something different to the learning process. There is light, non-REM sleep, deep, slow-wave sleep, and REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, during which vivid dreaming often occurs. These stages cycle roughly every 90 minutes throughout the night. Scientists now believe that different types of learning are processed by different sleep stages. Physical skills, like learning a piano piece or riding a bicycle, seem to rely more on late-night REM sleep. Factual memories lean more heavily on deep, slow-wave sleep, which dominates the first half of the night. The hippocampus is the brain region most closely linked to forming new memories, and it works hard while you are awake, absorbing scenes, facts, names, and sequences like a rapid capture device. But the hippocampus has limited storage capacity. It is not designed to hold everything forever. During deep sleep, the hippocampus begins a kind of handoff. It replays recently acquired information and gradually transfers it to the cerebral cortex, where longer-term storage is managed. This process, known as systems consolidation, is thought to be one of the primary reasons sleep is so deeply tied to what we are able to remember days, weeks, and months later. The brain does not transfer memories randomly during sleep. It appears to prioritize. Studies using functional MRI have found that information flagged during the day as emotionally significant or personally relevant tends to be replayed more vigorously during sleep than neutral material. Your brain seems to make decisions about what matters while you rest, reinforcing memories that carried weight and allowing others to fade with the night. This selectivity is not a flaw, it is a feature. Without it, the sheer volume of daily experience would overwhelm the brain's storage systems and make everything equally, and therefore uselessly, retrievable. One of the most striking early demonstrations of sleep learning came from studies on motor skills. Participants in a Harvard study were taught a finger-tapping sequence, a simple pattern, like a piano scale, and then tested on speed and accuracy after a night of sleep. Those who slept improved their performance by roughly 20% compared to those who stayed awake for the same interval. The improvement happened not during the practice session itself, but during the night that followed. The sleeping brain, it appeared, had continued the work the waking brain had begun, refining a skill without any further conscious effort. Slow wave sleep, the deepest stage of non-REM sleep, is characterized by large, synchronized oscillations of brain activity called slow oscillations or delta waves. These waves appear to coordinate the dialogue between the hippocampus and the cortex during memory consolidation. As slow oscillations move through the brain, they are accompanied by brief bursts of faster activity called sleep spindles, and even briefer microrhythms called sharp wave ripples, originating from the hippocampus. The three rhythms appear to work in concert, a layered, interlocking pattern that researchers describe as the brain's nighttime filing system, running through the hours of deep sleep with quiet efficiency. Sleep spindles, the rapid bursts of neural oscillation that appear during light, non-REM sleep, have become one of the most studied indicators of learning-related sleep activity. The number and density of sleep spindles a person generates on a given night appears to correlate with how much they improve on a learned task the following morning. People who naturally produce more sleep spindles tend to score higher on certain cognitive tests. In recent years, researchers have explored whether artificially enhancing sleep spindle activity through gentle acoustic or electrical stimulation during sleep could improve memory consolidation, with promising early results that warrant further investigation. The brain does not only consolidate memories during sleep, it also appears to generalize them. A memory formed through specific experience can, during sleep, be transformed into a broader rule or pattern. Children shown a grammar system with made-up words were better at applying the underlying rules they were never directly taught, after a night of sleep than after the same amount of waking time. The sleeping brain had extracted the structure from the examples and encoded it as something more abstract and flexible. Sleep, in this sense, may be where specific knowledge becomes transferable understanding, moving from the particular to the general without any conscious effort. So the picture emerging from decades of sleep research is already striking. The brain does not simply archive the day's experiences during sleep. It selects them, replays them, restructures them, and in some cases transforms them into something more general and durable than what was originally laid down. What does the brain truly learn when you are not awake? The answer seems to be more than we ever gave it credit for, and through processes more active and purposeful than we imagined. The waking hours plant the seeds. The sleeping hours are where roots form, and the night is long. The relationship between sleep and learning is not uniform across the lifespan. Infants and young children spend enormous amounts of time in REM sleep. Researchers believe this is connected to the rapid pace of neural development and learning that happens in early childhood. As we age, total REM sleep tends to decrease. Sleep spindle density also drops over time. Some scientists hypothesize this contributes to the slower rate of new skill acquisition in older adults. though other factors play a role too. The architecture of sleep, it seems, mirrors the architecture of learning at every stage of life. There is a class of memories scientists call declarative memories, the kind you can consciously recall and describe, like historical facts, personal episodes, or the meaning of words. These are distinct from procedural or implicit memories, which encode how to do things, like swim or type, and which operate largely below conscious awareness. Sleep appears to support both types, but through partly different mechanisms. Declarative memories rely heavily on hippocampal cortical dialogue during slow-wave sleep. Procedural memories appear more dependent on REM sleep and on areas of the brain involved in movement and habit, including the basal ganglia and cerebellum. Targeted memory reactivation is a research technique that exploits the brain's nighttime replay process. During a learning session, researchers associate specific memories with subtle sensory cues, a particular smell, a quiet sound, later, while the participant sleeps. Those same cues are introduced softly, below the threshold of waking. The brain detects the familiar cue and preferentially replays the associated memory, strengthening it relative to uncued memories. Studies using this technique have boosted spatial learning, vocabulary acquisition, and even emotional memory in sleeping participants. Without their awareness of any intervention, the sleeping brain, it turns out, remains a receptive listener long after the eyes have closed. Emotional memories occupy a special place in sleep learning research. Studies have consistently shown that sleep helps preserve the emotional content of memories, while sometimes softening the raw distress associated with difficult experiences. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, proposed that REM sleep acts as a kind of overnight therapy. During this stage, emotionally charged experiences are replayed in a neurochemical environment with lower noradrenaline, the brain's main stress chemical. This lower stress environment may allow the brain to process difficult material without re-traumatizing itself. Whether or not this fully explains the mechanism, the idea that sleep helps us carry our emotional past more lightly has resonated widely. One of the more counterintuitive findings in sleep and memory research is that forgetting, at least certain kinds of forgetting, appears to be an active and beneficial part of the overnight process. The brain does not simply try to preserve everything it encounters, it appears to prune as well. Some researchers propose that synaptic homeostasis, the gradual weakening of less relevant neural connections during sleep, matters just as much to learning as the strengthening of significant ones. By clearing away the noise, the brain makes the signal more distinct. Sleep may help us remember better, partly by helping us forget more efficiently. The prefrontal cortex, the region most associated with complex reasoning, planning, and executive function, is particularly sensitive to sleep deprivation. Even one night of poor sleep can measurably impair working memory, attention, and the ability to form new associations. Studies in college students have found that staying awake all night before an exam tends to produce worse long-term retention than sleeping. This holds even when the sleep-deprived student feels they did fine on a test the next morning. The felt sense of competence and the actual quality of consolidation can diverge sharply when sleep is lost. The brain's ledger and the student's confidence are not always in agreement. Not all learning benefits equally from sleep at the same point in the process. Some skills show large overnight improvement with minimal practice beforehand. Others require extensive waking practice before the brain has enough material to consolidate during sleep. A beginner pianist may show modest sleep-dependent gains after a single session, An intermediate player who has practiced the same piece many times benefits more from each night of sleep. The relationship between practice and sleep is not a simple sequence. It is iterative, each round of learning and sleeping, deepening what came before. The glymphatic system, a network of channels surrounding the brain's blood vessels, functions primarily during sleep and is responsible for flushing out metabolic waste products that accumulate in the brain during waking hours. Among the substances cleared during sleep is amyloid beta, a protein whose accumulation in the brain is associated with Alzheimer's disease. Researchers have found that the brain's interstitial spaces appear to expand during sleep, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow more freely and carry waste away more efficiently. The full clinical significance of this process in humans remains an active area of investigation, but the findings have drawn considerable scientific interest. Dreams, the most vivid and narratively complex experiences of sleep, have long fascinated researchers trying to understand their role in memory consolidation. While the precise function of dreaming remains debated, there is evidence that dream content sometimes reflects recently learned material. Musicians learning new pieces have reported dreaming of the music. Participants in maze learning tasks have described dreaming of navigating the maze. One leading theory holds that dreams help the brain test and extend newly consolidated memories. They do this by embedding those memories in imaginative, associative contexts, a kind of nocturnal rehearsal that may prepare new knowledge for flexible use when morning arrives. A nap, it turns out, can do noteworthy work. Sarah Mednick at the University of California, Irvine, has shown that a 90-minute midday nap can reverse the deterioration in learning performance that typically occurs across a waking day. When that nap contains both REM and slow-wave sleep, it can, in some cases, restore performance to morning levels. A shorter 20 to 30-minute nap, rich in light, non-REM sleep, provides a smaller but meaningful benefit, primarily for alertness and working memory, rather than deep consolidation. Even a brief period of sleep carries within it the basic machinery of restoration. The brain does not need long to begin its work. Sleep learning research has begun to inform athletic training. Professional sports teams and performance coaches increasingly recognize that sleep is not simply a recovery tool. It is a technical component of skill acquisition. A study at Stanford University found that basketball players who extended their sleep to 10 hours per night improved over 5 to 7 weeks. Their shooting accuracy, sprint times, and reaction speed all improved by meaningful margins. The researchers concluded that the additional sleep allowed more complete nightly consolidation of the motor patterns being practiced during daytime training. Rest, in this context, is not the absence of training. It is where training is finished. Language learning may be uniquely supported by sleep. Studies have found that vocabulary memorized in the evening, before sleep, is retained better the following morning than vocabulary studied in the morning and tested in the evening after a full waking day. The difference is not simply that sleep prevents forgetting. The evening sleep group actually shows consolidation gains that cannot be explained by protection from interference alone. Researchers believe that the neural circuits involved in language, particularly those encoding sound meaning associations, may be especially active during the slow wave stages that dominate early night sleep, making the hours after language study particularly productive ones. There is a phenomenon researchers call insight sleep, the tendency for solutions to difficult problems to emerge after a period of sleep rather than continued waking effort. A notable study by Ulrich Wagner and colleagues presented participants with a complex number sequence problem that contained a hidden shortcut. Participants who slept between training and testing were nearly 3 times more likely to discover the shortcut than those who remained awake for the same interval. The sleeping brain appears to rearrange the elements of a problem in ways the waking, goal-directed mind does not easily permit. Some forms of understanding require stillness to arrive. Sleep learning research has practical implications for how we think about study schedules. The concept of spaced repetition, reviewing material at increasing intervals over time, is well established as a superior learning strategy. But spacing alone is not the whole story. Research has shown that the placement of sleep within a spaced repetition schedule matters significantly. A spacing interval that includes a night of sleep produces better long-term retention than an equivalent interval spent awake. The overnight consolidation period acts as a kind of reset that amplifies the effect of the next review session. Sleep is not a gap in learning. It is the hinge on which good learning turns. 25 facts in. And the answer to tonight's question is already beginning to take shape. Sleep is not the absence of learning. It is a distinct, active phase of learning. It operates through different mechanisms than waking study, shapes different aspects of memory, and makes possible kinds of understanding that no amount of additional conscious effort can produce. The brain that absorbs information during the day and the brain that consolidates it at night are 2 halves of a single process. What does the brain truly learn when you are not awake more and differently than you knew? You've been with us for a while now, and your breathing has likely softened without you noticing. A soft subscribe helps another sleepless mind find this sanctuary too. Now, let's pause together, one sleepy soul at a time. Let's pause here and notice your body as you breathe out slowly. Appreciate each tiny cell inside, trillions of organisms working in silence, heart beating, lungs breathing, brain thinking, all without your command. Notice the gentle sensations on your skin, in your muscles, along your spine. You are a complete ecosystem, diverse, self-balancing. Now we continue. The sleeping brain does not experience all memories as equally worth preserving. Research suggests it applies something like a relevance filter, weighted toward material that the waking brain marked, consciously or not, as significant. One mechanism for this tagging appears to involve dopamine. When an experience carries a sense of reward, novelty, or emotional weight, dopamine release during the event may signal the hippocampus to hold this memory with more initial strength, giving it a head start when the overnight consolidation process begins. The brain's valuation system and its memory system are more intimately connected than we once assumed. The concept of schema, a pre-existing framework of knowledge into which new information can be slotted, appears to significantly accelerate sleep-dependent consolidation. When new material fits an existing schema, it seems to integrate with long-term cortical storage more rapidly and with less hippocampal involvement than entirely novel information. This may explain why experts in a domain can often learn new material within that domain much faster than novices, and retain it more durably after a single night of sleep. The brain learns new things more efficiently when it already has a structure to receive them. A growing body of research suggests that sleep-dependent consolidation is not a passive replay, but involves active transformation of what was learned. The brain does not simply strengthen a recording of the original experience. It abstracts, reorganizes, and in some cases updates memories with newly available information. This means that what you retrieve after a night of sleep may differ in subtle but meaningful ways from what you originally encoded. The memory has been edited, not distorted in a damaging sense, but refined, stripped of peripheral details and aligned more cleanly with the patterns that mattered most to your brain. One of the most intriguing lines of evidence for sleep learning comes from studies on creativity. Participants who slept between an initial encounter with a creative problem and their final attempt at solving it generated more original, flexible solutions than those who remained awake. Sleep researchers studying REM in particular, with its characteristic cross-activation of loosely associated brain regions, have found that this stage appears to facilitate the kind of distant, novel connections that underlie creative insight. The dreaming brain draws links that the focused, task-oriented waking mind tends to suppress. Sleep may be where creativity is assembled. The brain's consolidation of motor memories during sleep is sensitive to the timing and content of what happens immediately before sleep onset. Research published in Nature Neuroscience found that very brief periods of slow-wave activity, just a few minutes, occurring in the transition zone between waking and sleep, called hypnagogia, could consolidate motor sequences that had been practiced immediately beforehand. The findings suggested that the earliest moments of sleep onset carry more consolidation capacity than previously recognized. The threshold between waking and sleeping is not merely a boundary, it is a processing zone, active from the very first moment of letting go. Sleep architecture changes across the night in ways that align with different consolidation functions. The first half of a typical night contains more slow-wave sleep, which appears to dominate declarative and factual consolidation. The second half contains more REM sleep, which appears more involved in emotional processing, procedural consolidation, and creative association. This means that sleeping for 6 hours instead of 8 does not simply reduce rest proportionally. It disproportionately cuts into REM sleep. If you are learning emotionally complex material or working on creative problems, the second half of the night may be especially valuable. The brain does not isolate new memories from existing ones during sleep. Consolidation appears to involve integrating new material into existing neural networks, a process that can strengthen, modify, or even gently overwrite earlier related memories. This integration is one reason why sleep can sometimes improve performance on a task even without additional practice. The brain has spent the night fitting the new learning into a broader context and building the associative links that make retrieval more fluid. When you wake, you are not simply returning to what you knew before sleep. You are accessing something that has been reorganized overnight. Slow-wave sleep appears to be especially valuable for the consolidation of spatial learning. The ability to navigate and remember the layout of physical or conceptual environments. Studies using virtual maze tasks have found that hippocampal cells that were active during a waking navigation session replay their firing sequences during subsequent slow-wave sleep, sometimes at greatly accelerated speeds. The brain, in effect, reruns the path you walked, not once, but many times. Each replay slightly strengthening the neural circuits that represent where you went and how you got there. Memory of space, it turns out, is written at night. The neurotransmitter acetylcholine plays a complex regulatory role in the balance between encoding and consolidation. During waking, acetylcholine levels are high, which supports the rapid encoding of new information but appears to suppress the consolidation of existing memories, preventing premature integration that could disrupt still fresh learning. During slow-wave sleep, acetylcholine levels drop sharply, effectively releasing the brake on consolidation. This oscillation, encode during waking, consolidate during sleep, appears to be one of the brain's core strategies for managing the potentially conflicting demands of acquiring new memories and stabilizing existing ones. Sleep deprivation impairs not only the consolidation of memories that were formed before the lost sleep, but also the encoding of new memories the following day. A person who has slept poorly is less able to form new, stable memories than one who has slept well, even if their subjective sense of fatigue is modest. This creates a compounding effect. Missed sleep today means both weaker consolidation of what was learned yesterday and weaker encoding of what is learned tomorrow. The cost of poor sleep to learning is not linear but cumulative. Some researchers have proposed that the role of REM sleep in memory consolidation may be particularly significant for emotional learning. Specifically, for learning to accurately read and respond to other people's emotional signals. Studies have found that people who are selectively deprived of REM sleep become worse at recognizing facial expressions of subtle or ambiguous emotions. They tend to misread neutral or mildly negative faces as more threatening. The suggestion is that REM sleep normally helps calibrate the emotional response system, keeping it sensitive to nuance rather than defaulting to threat detection. Social understanding, in this view, is partly maintained through sleep. The phenomenon of overnight memory consolidation has practical implications for how we think about rest in the context of learning difficulty. For skills or concepts that feel frustratingly inaccessible after a long practice session, a full night of sleep sometimes produces a sudden sense of clarity that more practice alone could not deliver. Musicians, mathematicians, and athletes have described returning to a problem the morning after a difficult session and finding it more tractable than it seemed the night before. The brain has spent the intervening night not just resting but problem solving, and sometimes arriving at the solution without being asked. The relationship between stress and sleep-dependent consolidation runs in both directions and is complex. Moderate stress before learning, the kind generated by challenge rather than threat, can enhance subsequent consolidation, possibly by elevating cortisol and noradrenaline to levels that support hippocampal encoding. But high stress, particularly when it persists into the sleep period, can fragment sleep architecture, reduce slow-wave sleep, and impair consolidation significantly. The body's stress response and the brain's memory systems evolved to work together under manageable conditions, and to pull against each other when those conditions tip into chronic strain. In recent years, researchers published findings from studies using closed-loop brain stimulation during sleep, a technique in which computers detect specific neural signatures in real time during sleep and deliver precisely timed acoustic pulses to amplify them. Early trials showed that targeting slow-wave oscillations during their natural upswings could enhance the density of sleep spindles and, in some participants, improve next-day performance on memory tasks. While the technology remains in the research phase, the results suggest that the brain's natural sleep learning processes may be amplifiable, that the nightly consolidation window can, in principle, be opened wider. 40 facts through this night, and the evidence has accumulated steadily. The sleeping brain is a working brain. Its activity is structured, purposeful, and sensitive to what the waking brain has experienced. Different sleep stages perform different functions. Different types of memory rely on different neural rhythms, and disrupting sleep, whether through deprivation, fragmentation, or compression, impairs learning in ways that waking effort alone cannot compensate for. The brain that does not sleep fully does not learn fully. This is not a metaphor, it is biology, written into the architecture of every night. You're still here with me. Thoughts still flickering like candlelight. Just notice. Don't judge. just notice where your mind is. We're exploring consciousness itself. The very thing doing the exploring right now. Strange, beautiful, and perfectly calm. Let's drift onward together. If sleep-dependent consolidation is real and robust, it carries a quiet implication for how we think about intelligence itself. Much of what we call cognitive ability, the speed at which someone grasps new ideas, the reliability of their recall, the flexibility of their problem-solving, may be partly a reflection of sleep quality, accumulated over years. A person who consistently sleeps well is not just more rested than one who does not. They may be learning more efficiently from every experience, building a richer and more interconnected store of knowledge with each passing night. One of the more subtle effects of sleep on learning involves the integration of new knowledge with autobiographical memory, the personal narrative of who we are and what we have experienced. Research has found that sleep helps bind newly learned information to the emotional and contextual memories associated with learning it. This binding may be one reason that meaningful learning, material we connect personally to our own lives, tends to be retained better after sleep than emotionally neutral material. The brain seems to weave knowledge and experience together during the night, making understanding more personal and therefore more durable. Children's nap sleep has emerged as a particularly notable subject in developmental learning research. Studies of preschool children have found that daytime naps play a significant role in generalizing newly learned information, especially language. A child who naps after hearing new vocabulary is more likely to retain those words and apply them in novel contexts than a child who remains awake for the equivalent period. The finding has led some developmental psychologists to argue that the elimination of nap time in early childhood education may carry cognitive costs that are rarely factored into scheduling decisions. The relationship between sleep and working memory, a system that holds information actively in mind for immediate use, is particularly well documented. Working memory capacity appears to depend heavily on sleep quality. And even moderate sleep restriction produces measurable decrements in tasks requiring the simultaneous maintenance and manipulation of information. What is less obvious is that these deficits often go unnoticed by the person experiencing them. Subjective feelings of competence remain relatively intact even as objective performance declines. This mismatch between felt ability and actual ability is one of the more sobering findings in sleep deprivation research. Synaptic plasticity, the ability of neural connections to strengthen or weaken in response to experience, is the cellular basis of learning. Research has shown that many of the molecular processes underlying synaptic plasticity are regulated by sleep. Proteins involved in long-term potentiation, the strengthening of synaptic connections that encodes lasting memories, are synthesized in elevated quantities during sleep. Some of this synthesis requires the specific pattern of neural activity that occurs during slow-wave oscillations. Sleep is not merely the context in which memory consolidation happens. It actively supplies the molecular machinery that consolidation depends upon. There is an emerging field of research investigating the role of sleep in the consolidation of social and cultural learning. The kind of implicit knowledge that governs how we navigate relationships, read group dynamics, and absorb the norms of the communities we belong to. While direct experimental evidence remains limited, several studies have suggested that social scripts and interpersonal patterns show sleep-dependent stabilization similar to other procedural memories. If this holds, it would suggest that the face we turn to the world each morning has been shaped, in part, by the night that preceded it. Some of the most compelling evidence for the role of sleep in learning comes from studies of amnesia. Patients with hippocampal damage, which impairs the formation of new explicit memories, often show preserved procedural learning, including the ability to improve on motor tasks across sessions despite having no conscious recollection of ever having practiced them. Conversely, patients with disrupted REM sleep sometimes show impaired emotional and procedural learning, even with intact hippocampal function. These dissociations have helped researchers map which aspects of overnight consolidation depend on which brain structures and sleep stages, clarifying what each part of the sleeping brain contributes to the morning self. There is a concept in neuroscience called offline processing, the idea that the brain continues to work on problems and integrate information during periods of rest and sleep, independent of any direct external input. Offline processing during waking rest, even in the absence of sleep, has been shown to support some degree of memory consolidation, but sleep appears to be the most powerful form of offline processing available to the human brain. The combination of neural replay, specific oscillatory patterns, and carefully regulated neurochemistry during sleep creates conditions for memory transformation that quiet, waking rest can approximate but not replicate. The architecture of the brain's overnight consolidation process may help explain why cramming, massing study into a single long session before an exam, is such an inefficient learning strategy over the long term. Cramming maximizes short-term retrieval at the cost of durable consolidation. Without spaced sleep intervals between study sessions, the brain's natural overnight processing is applied only once to material that would benefit from multiple consolidation cycles. The knowledge acquired by cramming tends to be fragile, accessible the next morning, but fading rapidly over the following days as the single consolidation event proves insufficient to anchor it deeply. Halfway through our journey tonight, the central question has been answered in its intellectual form. The brain learns during sleep by replaying, restructuring, abstracting, and integrating. It learns motor skills, language, emotional tone, creative associations, and factual knowledge, each through overlapping but distinct mechanisms. The sleeping brain is a learning brain. The consolidation that happens in these dark hours is not supplementary to the learning of the day. It is the completion of it. What the brain truly learns when you are not awake is not something separate from what you studied. It is what you studied, finally finished. Let each breath guide you to realize. Time is yours, a separate stream that only you are living. While the vast universe continues to spin, expand, change. This second you're breathing, listening, is unique. Cherish the present moment, knowing that right now, your time is unique in the universe. The science of sleep learning has begun to reshape how some educators think about instructional design. If consolidation depends on the interval between learning episodes, and if sleep within that interval strongly enhances retention, then the sequencing of lessons matters in ways that classroom schedules have rarely honored. Some educational researchers have proposed that spacing instruction across days, with deliberate sleep intervals, could significantly improve long-term learning outcomes in school-age children and adults alike. The implication is far-reaching. The architecture of a curriculum may be as valuable as its content. The sleeping brain does not merely store what you knew, it appears to store what you almost knew. The partial understandings and just forming intuitions that did not quite consolidate during waking hours. Studies have found that participants who were exposed to complex patterns without being told what to look for showed significant implicit learning of those patterns after sleep. Even though they could not consciously describe what they had picked up, the night seems to collect the residue of the day's experience and press it into something usable, insight. In this sense, may be less a flash of inspiration than a slow overnight accumulation. Research on sleep and language acquisition has revealed something subtle about the way the brain stores words. When a new word is learned and then consolidated during sleep, it does not simply become a stronger version of the original trace. It becomes linked to related words already stored in long-term memory, semantically integrated into the lexicon, rather than merely added to it. This integration appears to depend on sleep and does not occur equivalently during waking consolidation periods. The difference between knowing a word and truly knowing a word, being able to use it fluidly and creatively, may partly unfold in sleep. One of the more philosophically interesting aspects of sleep learning research is what it suggests about the nature of the self. If the person who wakes in the morning has a different neural configuration than the person who lay down the night before, if memories have been restructured, integrated, and subtly rewritten during sleep, then the self that emerges each morning is not simply the same self, resumed. It has been, in the most imperceptible way, revised. Sleep is not an interruption of experience. It may be one of the primary processes through which experience becomes part of who we are. The brain's hippocampus contains a class of neurons called place cells, neurons that fire when an animal occupies a specific location in space. During waking navigation, sequences of place cells activate in order, mapping out the path traveled. During subsequent sleep, those same sequences replay, sometimes in the exact order of the original journey, sometimes in reverse, and sometimes in forms that appear scrambled. Some researchers believe these varied replay patterns serve specific computational functions, helping the brain extract spatial structure that is not obvious from the forward sequence alone. The night, it seems, reorganizes the map. The interplay between sleep and working memory extends to a phenomenon called memory-guided behavior, the ability to use previously learned information to guide decisions in new situations. People who are sleep-deprived show not only impaired recall of specific memories, but reduced ability to use those memories flexibly in novel contexts. They tend to rely on more rigid, habitual responses even when the situation calls for adaptation. The flexibility that distinguishes intelligent from mechanical behavior, the ability to draw on what you know in ways that fit the present moment, depends, it seems, on having slept. Research has found that sleep plays a significant role in the consolidation of mathematical problem-solving skills. In studies examining students who slept between 2 learning sessions, those who slept solved novel problems from the same domain faster and with greater accuracy than those who remained awake. The sleep group showed evidence of rule extraction. They had not merely memorized specific examples, but appeared to have internalized the underlying structure, The finding adds to a growing literature suggesting that abstract, transferable knowledge may be especially dependent on sleep for its full formation. There is a concept in sleep research called procedural offline learning, a measurable improvement in a practiced motor or perceptual skill that occurs during a rest period without any additional training. This offline learning is modest but reliable during waking rest, and substantially larger after a full night of sleep. The improvement is not simply a recovery of fatigue-impaired performance. It is a genuine gain. The skill is better after sleep than it was at peak performance the day before. This means that the night between practice sessions is not empty time. It is part of the practice. The role of sleep in consolidating olfactory memory for sense, is one of the more unusual threads in the broader literature on sleep learning. Olfactory memories are formed through pathways that differ from those used by other sensory modalities, involving early activation of the amygdala and the piriform cortex, a region of the brain that processes smell signals. With less initial hippocampal involvement, studies have found that olfactory memories can be selectively strengthened during sleep using targeted memory reactivation, delivering the original scent during slow-wave sleep to trigger replay. The finding suggests that the overnight processing principle extends even to the most ancient of the senses. One of the less obvious implications of sleep learning research concerns the nature of reading. When you read something meaningful, a passage that moves you, a concept that clicks, the moment of reading is not the moment of understanding. Understanding is assembled gradually, partly during the reading, and partly during the sleep that follows. The brain takes what it encountered on the page and builds it into something more connected, more personally meaningful, more retrievable. The reader who sleeps with a book's ideas inside them is not the same reader who picked it up. The text has entered a process that the night will continue. Sleep and creativity share more neural territory than we once assumed. The brain regions most active during REM sleep, including the default mode network, associated with mind wandering, imagination, and autobiographical memory, are among the same regions most engaged during creative thinking while awake. This overlap suggests a functional relationship. The neural activity of REM sleep may not only consolidate memories, but prime the brain for the associative, non-linear thinking that characterizes creative work. Sleeping well before a creative task may matter just as much as sleeping well after the day of preparation that preceded it. Research in recent years has increasingly examined the role of individual differences in sleep learning. People vary substantially in the efficiency of their sleep-dependent consolidation, a variability that appears partly genetic and partly driven by sleep architecture differences. Those who naturally generate denser sleep spindles tend to show larger overnight gains in motor learning tasks. Those with naturally higher amounts of slow-wave sleep tend to show stronger declarative consolidation. These differences may partly explain why some people seem to learn more easily from experience than others, and why protecting sleep quality may matter more for some individuals than others. Among the most practically significant findings in sleep learning research is that the timing of learning relative to sleep matters. Material learned within a few hours of sleep onset in the late evening shows stronger consolidation than the same material learned in the morning or afternoon and carried through a full waking day before the first sleep opportunity. Active consolidation appears to begin almost immediately after sleep onset, making proximity to sleep a genuine advantage for retention of what you most want to remember. The hours before bed may be among the most valuable of the day. The sleeping brain appears to make predictions. Research using computational analysis of hippocampal replay activity during sleep has found patterns of neural firing that are not simple replays of the day's experiences, but seem to anticipate future events. As if the brain were running forward simulations based on recently learned patterns. This predictive activity during sleep may be one mechanism through which learning becomes generative, not just storing what happened, but building a model that can infer what might happen next. The sleeping brain, in this view, is not merely archiving the past, it is preparing for the future. The full picture of sleep-dependent learning now involves not just declarative and procedural memories, but something researchers are calling statistical learning, the implicit extraction of patterns and regularities from the stream of experience. This happens largely below conscious awareness. You do not know you are doing it while it occurs. Sleep appears to play a significant role in consolidating these learned patterns, particularly during slow-wave sleep. This may be part of why long-term immersion in a language or skilled domain across many nights of sleep gradually instills a fluency that conscious study alone cannot fully replicate. The capacity for sleep-dependent learning does not disappear with age, but it shifts in notable ways. Older adults show reduced amounts of slow-wave sleep and fewer sleep spindles than younger adults. And this decline in sleep quality appears to contribute to well-documented age-related decrements in memory consolidation. However, research has also found that older adults can still show meaningful overnight memory gains, particularly for material that aligns with their existing knowledge and interests. The brain's overnight filing system slows with age, but it does not close. Supporting good sleep quality in older age may be one of the most accessible means of protecting cognitive vitality. Alcohol, despite its sedating effects, consistently disrupts sleep-dependent memory consolidation. Even moderate alcohol consumption before sleep has been shown to suppress REM sleep and slow-wave sleep during the first half of the night, precisely the period most associated with declarative consolidation. Studies have found that participants who consumed alcohol after learning showed significantly worse retention of the learned material the following morning, compared to those who did not drink. The sedation produced by alcohol is not the same as restorative sleep. The brain under alcohol does not consolidate, it drifts, without doing the work. One of the most recent frontiers in sleep learning research involves memory editing during sleep. Researchers have explored whether it is possible not only to strengthen specific memories during sleep using targeted reactivation, but also to selectively weaken or update them, effectively altering stored information by changing the context in which it is replayed. Early studies have shown that presenting a competing association during the replay window can reduce the strength of the original memory. If confirmed, this line of research could eventually have implications for the treatment of intrusive memories and trauma. The benefits of sleep for learning appear to extend to implicit attitude formation. Studies examining how sleep affects the consolidation of newly formed associations between concepts and evaluative responses, the kinds of associations that underlie preferences and gut reactions, have found that implicitly learned associations are strengthened by sleep. This means that not only the facts we study, but the evaluative frameworks we absorb from experience may be shaped by the sleep that follows. The attitudes we carry without quite knowing why may have been reinforced, in part, on the nights we slept soundly after absorbing them. Physical exercise has been shown to enhance subsequent sleep-dependent memory consolidation through multiple mechanisms. Aerobic exercise increases the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, a protein that supports synaptic plasticity and is thought to prepare the brain for more efficient encoding of new information. Exercise also tends to deepen slow-wave sleep, and increase sleep spindle density on the subsequent night. Researchers have begun describing sleep and exercise as a synergistic pair, each amplifying the benefits of the other for brain health and learning. Moving during the day, it seems, is also part of the preparation for the night's work. Dreams have a distinctive neural signature. During REM sleep, the medial prefrontal cortex, which normally exercises top-down control over imagination and narrative, shows reduced activity, while the amygdala, hippocampus, and visual association areas become highly active. This pattern produces the characteristic quality of dreaming: vivid, emotional, loosely narrative, and freed from the logical constraints of waking thought. Some researchers argue that this specific neural state is not incidental to memory consolidation, but central to it. That the looseness of dream state associations is precisely what allows the brain to form the flexible, cross-domain connections that support creative and integrative learning. There is evidence that the brain uses sleep to consolidate not just explicit memories but the internal models, the implicit theories about how the world works, that allow us to navigate complex environments without conscious deliberation. These models are updated gradually and largely invisibly during waking experience, but their stabilization appears to depend on sleep. Researchers studying complex learning tasks, where participants are asked to intuit the rules of an artificial system or network, have found that overnight sleep accelerates the point at which participants begin to make accurate predictions. Understanding is not just built during the day, it is finalized at night. The relationship between sleep and the formation of false memories is more nuanced than it might initially appear. While sleep tends to strengthen accurate consolidation, it can also, in certain conditions, increase the integration of related but never experienced events into existing memory networks. This is not a failure of the consolidation system. It reflects the same generalization process that makes sleep-dependent learning so powerful. The brain extrapolates from what it knows, sometimes beyond the boundaries of what actually happened. The same mechanism that allows a sleeping child to generalize a grammar rule can allow a sleeping adult to misremember a detail that fits the pattern of their experience. As sleep science has progressed, it has become increasingly clear that the distinction between learning and sleep is somewhat artificial. The two processes are not sequential. Learn during the day, consolidate at night, but interwoven across the full cycle of waking and sleeping. What you learned last night shapes what you can learn today. What you learn today is shaped by how well you slept, and what you sleep tonight will determine how much of today remains with you next week. The learner and the sleeper are not two versions of the same person, alternating. They are one process, cycling. The brain has taught us, through decades of careful study, that sleep is not the absence of learning. It is, in a very real sense, where learning is completed. The consolidation that happens in the hours between midnight and morning is not supplementary to the effort of the day. It is the transformation of that effort into something lasting. The brain that absorbs information while awake and the brain that processes it while asleep are not distinct systems running in sequence. They are two phases of a single, continuous act of understanding. Tonight, your brain is learning. It has been all along. You might be feeling tired now. That's perfectly fine. Breathe slowly. Feel the cycles. Your neurons firing, resting, firing again. Your breath moving in and out. Your body growing heavier, settling deeper, like your breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. A small cycle within the vast universe. You are also part of that eternal movement. You don't need to hold on to anything. Let everything unfold in its perfect order, unhurried, unresisting, simply existing. We're almost there now. Sleep does not interrupt the story of a day. It continues it. The neurons that encoded what you saw and heard and tried to learn today are still active as you drift, firing in patterns that echo the waking hours, building what is still unfinished. The day does not end when you close your eyes. It changes form, and the work carries on. Every child who woke one morning suddenly able to ride a bicycle, certain they could not the day before, experienced this directly. The skill did not arrive during sleep. It was assembled there, in the dark, without effort or awareness. The brain took what practice had prepared and finished what practice alone could not. Morning is sometimes just the moment the door opens. The hippocampus, no larger than a curved finger, replays entire days during the night, not in real time, in fragments, compressed, selected. The scenes that mattered most pass through again, finding their way into deeper storage. The details that did not simply loosen and release. Every morning, you wake having already let something go, and carrying something more durably than before. You have absorbed more today than you know. Patterns you could not name, tones you registered without noticing, the shape of a conversation, the logic beneath an idea, the rhythm of something practiced once. Sleep will take all of it and begin deciding what it means. By morning, some of it will be different, clearer, more settled, more fully yours. There is something generous about the sleeping brain. It does not demand that you stay awake to finish what you started. It takes the effort you made, however incomplete, however uncertain. And continues working quietly on your behalf through the night. You do not have to try anymore. You do not have to hold anything. The work is being done. The science of sleep learning does not ask you to sleep more in order to learn more. It tells you that learning and sleeping are already the same thing, seen from different angles of the same continuous process. Studying is the opening of a question. Sleep is where the answer begins to take shape. Neither is complete without the other. Both are necessary. Both are enough. Sleep spindles, those brief, rapid bursts of neural rhythm that appear during lighter sleep stages, have been described as the brain's internal metronome. Their rhythm is not random. It coordinates the transfer of memories from temporary storage to permanent home, moving new learning into keeping with each pulse. You will never feel them, but they are there right now. And they are working. The dreams that feel most vivid, the ones that linger at the edge of morning, may be the brain's loudest processing moments. The hippocampus and the amygdala working together, threading emotion and memory into something coherent, not replaying the day exactly, extracting something from it, a feeling, a pattern, a shape of understanding that no single waking hour quite produced on its own. Every night of good sleep is a small act of intellectual courage. It asks you to stop, to release the belief that more effort, more time awake, more striving will complete what the day began. The brain knows differently. The most valuable part of learning is the part that happens when you finally let go. In the quiet, when you are no longer trying, the pressure to always be absorbing, always improving, always catching up is a real and familiar weight. But sleep science offers a gentle counter-argument. The brain does not fall behind when you sleep. It advances steadily, without your awareness. The hours you surrender to rest are not hours subtracted from your progress. They are the hours your progress is actually made. Memory consolidation does not announce itself. You will not feel slow oscillations moving through your cortex. You will not notice the moment a short-term trace becomes a long-term one. The work happens below the threshold of anything you can sense, but it happens steadily, across every hour of sleep, every night. Something you did not quite know becomes something you do. The brain at night is not a brain at rest. It is a brain differently engaged. The same structures that mapped your experience during the day are now reviewing, selecting, compressing. The same networks that connected new ideas to old ones are deepening those connections in the dark. You are learning right now. You have been learning since you closed your eyes. There is a gentleness in the way the sleeping brain works. It does not force. It does not struggle. It receives the day's material and works with it the way water works with stone. Slowly, persistently, without visible effort. What is hard and unresolved today may be smooth and settled by morning. The brain does not need to be pushed. It only needs to sleep. The consolidation that happens tonight is not the only consolidation. What you retain from this night will be further refined on the next. And the next. Memory is not a single event. It is a process that unfolds across many nights. Each sleep adding another layer of structure and permanence to what began as fragile and fleeting. You are never finished learning, and neither is the night. So what does the brain truly learn when you are not awake? It learns what you almost understood. It learns what practice prepared but could not complete on its own. It learns the rules beneath the examples, the structure beneath the surface, the meaning beneath the facts. It takes the approximate and makes it whole. Every morning, you are the result of all the nights that came before. The slow oscillations that sweep the cortex during deep sleep have been described as the brain's tidal rhythms, rising and falling with a periodicity that mirrors the ebb and flow of the ocean. In their wake, synapses are reorganized, connections are reinforced or gently released. The brain is being remade in the most imperceptible way, according to what today suggested it should become. There is no amount of willpower that can accomplish what sleep accomplishes. No effort, no concentration, no additional review session can substitute for the molecular events that occur during slow-wave sleep. This is not a limitation to work around. It is a permission to accept some things can only be done by the part of you that has stopped trying. A child learning to read, an athlete mastering a movement, a musician internalizing a piece, an adult learning a new language. All of them sleep. And all of them are changed by that sleep in ways they will notice only obliquely. In a morning's sudden fluency, in a gesture that finally feels natural. Sleep is the silent teacher that works after every other teacher has gone home. The brain does not distinguish between the importance of what you studied and the importance of what you experienced. It consolidates both with equal seriousness. The lesson you deliberately memorized and the feeling you absorbed pass through the same overnight processing. What you learn and who you become are not separate processes. They share a mechanism. And that mechanism runs through every night you carry within you. Right now, the consolidated residue of thousands of nights of sleep, every skill you have, every word you know, every person you recognize, every story you have internalized, all of it passed through this process. You are not just the product of your waking hours. You are the product of your sleeping ones too. And tonight adds another layer, the fear of falling behind, the sense that the world keeps moving while you rest, dissolves a little when seen through the lens of sleep science. The brain does not fall behind when you sleep. It catches up. It integrates. It converts the raw material of the day into something it can actually use. Sleeping is not giving up on the race. It is the part where you become faster. Memory is not a photograph. It is more like a river, always moving, always being fed by new experience, always carrying more than is visible on the surface. Sleep is where the river deepens, where the current slows enough for sediment to settle, where what was turbulent becomes still. What you remember tomorrow is a river that ran through tonight. The big idea that has threaded through this entire night is this: the process of consolidation. The brain's overnight transformation of short-term information into long-term skill is not a footnote to learning. It is the destination of it. Everything you studied, practiced, absorbed, and tried was preparing raw material for this process. Sleep is precisely where that material becomes knowledge. You are lying in the dark, and your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do with the experiences of this day, not the effortful, striving work of waking hours, but something older and more patient, a process that evolved long before any exam, any deadline, any measure of performance. The brain has always known how to learn in the dark. It knew long before you were born. What does the brain truly learn when you are not awake? It learns that you are more than the effort you make while conscious. That understanding does not require vigilance, that some things arrive only when you stop reaching for them. The consolidation that happens in the quiet hours is not the reward for the work you did today. It is the work itself, finished, at last, while you sleep. And so, our journey through sleep learning comes to a gentle close. We've traveled from the first moment a memory begins to form, even before the eyes close, through the slow oscillations of deep sleep that carry experience into lasting structure, discovering along the way that the brain's most essential work happens without a single conscious effort, from the fragile trace of a new idea heard for the first time, to the silent consolidation that rewires the cortex while you rest, to the morning when something finally feels known. Sleep learning reminds us that understanding is not seized, it is allowed. Much of the most meaningful processing happens in silence, in the dark, in the patient hours between one day's experience and the next morning's clarity. The brain reveals a kind of patience we rarely credit ourselves with. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can, as deep as possible. Think about unity of every atom, every event, every moment in the universe. You are not separate. You are a link in the endless chain. Think about consciousness itself. Yours, mine, everyone listening. All awareness everywhere. Perhaps all connected in ways we don't yet understand. You are not alone in the universe of minds. Let your entire being dissolve into the ocean of consciousness, into dreamless rest, into the space before thought. This thoughtful exploration of how your brain learns while you rest. We hope it brought you stillness tonight. A gentle like and subscribe helps other sleepless minds find this sanctuary too. It only takes a moment, but it means the world to us. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. But there's no need to do anything now. Nothing at all. You've traveled far tonight, farther than most journeys take you. You can allow these thoughts of sleep learning to fade now, like the last light before a window goes dark, leaving only the deep, unhurried calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if the night itself were gently pressing you into rest. If sleep comes, let it carry you like a slow current moving through still water, smoothly, inevitably. into a realm where time and weight no longer matter. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you, ready to continue the journey. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, the consolidation will still be happening. The slow oscillations will have done their work. But tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, quiet mind, and remember, the brain that learns while awake and the brain that learns while asleep are one and the same, cycling through the night toward the same patient. Certain morning, fall asleep to gentle facts. Dream deeper with bedtime science. Good night.